welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. I'll be your astrologer this week. It's the end of February. March is coming soon, so we're going to take a look at all of the major transits for March of 2023. Just a little bit of like an overview. As most of you guys know, we break down all of the more important transits. As the month goes on, we'll break those down weekly. And I have to tell you, this is a really good month to be watching those weekly videos. Just listening to the horoscope can give you a general idea of what's coming. But we're going to go deeper into some of these planetary ingresses this month. And I'll be touching on that as we go through the weeks ahead. Do me a favor, if you're new to my channel, make sure you click the button below and you're subscribed. That way you're alerted as to when we have these videos coming out. We have so many planetary ingresses in the month of March. It's insanity. There will be 6 ingresses taking place this month. 2 of them being outer planets, so it's going to get a little hairy out there. And it's also going to be the end of a cycle and the beginning of a new, because we're going to be seeing the spring equinox here in the northern hemisphere, also known as the real New Year's or Astrology Day, when the sun ingresses into Aries. So wrapping a lot of stuff up in the Pisces area of our charts, moving into new and uncharted territory, and the momentum of life March through June 2023 is picking up very, very quickly. I would like to start today talking to you guys a little bit about just some of my major speaking points, one of which is the fact that we're going to be seeing both Pluto as well as Saturn move into new signs. So we're going to move out of that really critical 29 degrees where we feel like the volume's been turned up a bit in our life. We're being pressed to really pass this test. So you guys got to know where Capricorn and also Aquarius is in your chart. There is something shifting. And I'd like to read to you guys the Sabian Symbols just to get you guys more familiar with these themes, right? So we've had a lot of Aquarius energy these last few years. We go all the way back to 2020 where we saw Saturn go in and out of Aquarius and then finally ingress into 0 degrees of Aries with Jupiter. That happened, I think, December of 2020. So we're more familiar with that energy because we've had 2 years of Saturn in Aquarius showing us structures and where we need to build towards our goals and where we actually benefit by banding together. We're going to see now Pluto move into that part of the sky. So I'm going to read you guys the Sabian symbol for 1 degree of Aquarius. And then on the flip side, we're also going to see Saturn leave Aquarius and move into Pisces. And it will be spending the next 2.5 years in that sign, but it's really going to stay between 0 and 7 degrees in all of 2023. Regardless, I think it's important to get an idea of how these 2 particular signs are starting off, because it's going to feel like fresh, new energy. There's new areas in our life that we're going to be like working on. So let me read those to you guys real quick. So this is going to be first for 1 degrees of Aquarius. Some of you guys might recognize this. I do believe I spoke about this a bit in previous videos. And if you guys aren't already aware, this is the Sabian Symbols book that I work with. I always put an Amazon link below for those of you guys who are wondering what books I have on the channel or what tarot decks, or if you would like to get a copy of this yourself. It's always great to have something for reference to give you a little bit more food for thought in terms of what's going on with that planetary shift or placement if you like to use it for your natal. So this is going to be page 335, Aquarius 1 degree, an old Adobe mission. The keyword is durability. The theme is spiritual foundations. The symbol speaks to the reassurance and sustainment, the anchorage and durability. The image of an old Adobe mission alludes to the ability of everything rooted in spiritual to flourish and survive. In the 1800s, Spanish missionaries sprinkled the coast of California with missions in an attempt to establish religious roots and an adjunct to territorial expansion. These historic missions have survived to the present day. The emphasis in the symbol is on psychological as well as physical survival and the necessity for maintaining meaningful ties to the enduring values that sustain all men. At its highest, the symbol represents spiritual integrity, strength of character, and endurance. Watch for indifference or the inability to grasp the deeper meaning of things. Today, the accent is on sustainment. You may find it's important to surround yourself with things or people that help you feel anchored and secure. Your greatest advantage lies in giving time and attention to the relationships that are most important to you. Write that letter or make that call to someone who hasn't heard from you in a long time. Guard against getting overly involved in superficial, time-consuming activities. Don't neglect the things and people who really matter. Interesting that it talks a lot about grounding, and it's the very first degree of Aquarius. So it's going to have that, I mean, it's an air element, right? So it can be hard to feel grounded with some of the shifts going on with Pluto. But also it has like this impulsive nature because it's a 1. So it's like taking action to what? Aquarius, connect with others, right? Be the individual who's actively participating in like group dynamics. Stepping stones would be reassurance, sustainment, endurance, stability, anchorage, survival, hope, service, and spiritual integrity. I love that. I feel like, you know, this is going to be interesting. We're only going to see Pluto at this degree for about 2.5 months-ish. Pluto will go retrograde. It'll drop back into Capricorn later this summer. But yeah, so that's where we're kind of starting off. I love that it talks about spiritual foundations though, because we do need that. I think we need the grounding. I think that we may feel grounded through connection to other people, right? People always ask me, well, I have a lot of air in my chart, you know, like how can I ground my energy out? It doesn't have to be as complicated as like crystal gridding. You can do that if you want, but you know, like potting plants, working in a garden, cooking a meal, like being really present while you're doing your day-to-day routines can really help you stay tethered. But if you want to use, you know, gadgets and grounding mats and crystals and all kinds of things to stay grounded, you can do that too. But I think this is suggesting that we can ground in a much more abstract way, that we can feel grounded by having good friends and people who we can kind of count on and also connect to. And that maybe those connections and the opportunity to have good times can also keep us grounded in the midst of just what's going on in the world. I do genuinely feel like a lot of the energies right now are a little chaotic, and you're going to see this especially the first half of March with a lot of the mutable squares, and it's going to feel like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, and you're like, what the hell is going on in the world right now? And I'm not saying to be ignorant of some of the things that are taking place, but I am saying that your energy and what you're choosing to participate in or believe in vibrationally is going to make a wavelength that can affect other people. Okay, there can be like an energy that can kind of go out from your auric field, and if enough people decide to give in to the fear and the chaos, then we're going to see more of that. If people decide to shift and say, no, we're going to stay grounded with like-minded friends, and we're also going to be very present in the vibrations of our everyday life and what we are focusing on and what we're holding space for, the world will be a very different place. All right, so we looked at 1 degrees of Aquarius. Let's look at 1 degrees of Pisces, and this is where going to be Saturn is moving to. I really want to drive home the fact that these degrees will be ignited several times, okay, because they will retrograde back to these degrees. So we will see this come up several times as Saturn retrogrades back. It'll retrograde back to about 0 degrees later in the fall. And as Pluto retrogrades back, and it's going to go in and out of this degree a couple times between now and 2025. All right, so this is page 365, and this is 1 degrees of Pisces. A public market, the keyword is commerce. The theme is interchange. The symbol speaks to the role of groups in helping each member grow and refine his own unique potential. The image of a public market symbolizes interexchange of every kind, whether it takes the form of trade, barter, or social communication. Every group has its own genius, special genius, and purpose, and the ability of a group to fulfill its mission is largely dependent on the willingness of each member to carry out his share of the load and perform his individual task to the best of his ability. The emphasis here is on the necessary give and take at the heart of any collective, of being careful not to neglect personal needs and responsibilities in the process of trying to help others. At its highest, the symbol represents exceptional talent for meditating and resolving disputes, for getting people to work together cooperatively for the mutual benefit of all. You want to watch for self-centeredness and the inability to comprehend or appreciate the needs and desires of others. The accent is on interexchange. Today can be marked by network disruptions or some kind of breakdown in the system. Your greatest advantage lies in keeping the lines of communication open, making sure that you're holding up your end of things. Focus on equal distribution of fairness to all concerned. Guard against putting your own interests above the welfare of the group. Avoid the every man for himself approach. Stepping stones would be exchange, communication, trade, business, buying and selling, giving and taking, finance, transactions, and commerce. Well, we know that where Saturn goes, there is a sense of, there can be a sense of heaviness. There can be a sense of boundaries and limitations, high expectations, timelines. And I can go on and on and on about Saturn and Pisces, but I'll put it very simply. I think we're going to realize where if we are not helping each other, if we're not equally engaging and playing our role out in the world, then we're going to start to see some kind of a breakdown, right? So those who have been taking it in the shorts for some time, not receiving support emotionally, spiritually, financially, what have you, that's going to start to break, and we're going to see how it's going to have a domino effect, and it's going to affect other groups within society. Okay, so when I think of like Pisces, I think of hospital workers, I think of private centers, I think of healing centers, rehabs, prisons, spiritual groups, religious groups and affiliations. I, on one hand, am trying to stay optimistic and positive, knowing that if some of these groups form strong alliances and they're very strongly committed to their vision, they can challenge some of the programming and some of the institutions that are kind of dictating that they're doing things that goes against their belief system. Whether you're in the medical field and you don't resonate with the direction that things are going, or perhaps maybe you're a part of a religious or a spiritual group and you're feeling like there isn't enough support or there isn't enough of a sense of people really walking the walk and talking the talk. Integrity is going to be huge these next few years with Saturn being in Pisces. And unfortunately, because Pisces has this Neptunian connection, there is this sadness, there is the separation, there is the loss and transcendence. And so what we will learn through, I think, the Saturn and Pisces transit is we're going to experience loss, right? Which it's just what's going to happen. And what do we do when we experience loss, right? How do we grieve? Who's there to support us? Who's there to help us through that process? Whether it's, talking to a therapist as you're going through a difficult time navigating a change in a relationship, or you're needing to work with hospice workers because you're having to say goodbye to a loved one, or you're going to, a private spiritual or religious group and you're looking for guidance and support to kind of help you find the faith as you go through that time. The people who are going to be holding space, right, for those who are grieving or lost or who need help with sobriety or need mental help, these are going to be the focal points, I think, of society over these next few years. So thinking about this, talking about the public market, yeah, okay, so we might see changes literally how we exchange goods. I mean, yeah, I think that's inevitable with Pluto going into Aquarius. But I definitely think that this is also going to be about stopping this pattern of passing the buck, right? Passing the buck where it's not my problem, it's somebody else's problem, and like this ping pong that we see where nobody really wants to take responsibility. Everybody's so consumed with, it wasn't my fault, it's not my problem, that's your problem, that we see this perpetual state of things kind of unraveling. So I'm curious to see how this manifests. I think both of these degrees do talk very specifically about staying connected. And this is about lines of communication. And so on a global scale, I could see this, kind of playing out in terms of let's de-escalate some of this talk or threat of war. Let's keep the lines of communication open, especially with allies or with other, prime ministers or other, foreign leaders, to be able to avert, hopefully, some of this tension and some of this conflict. Network disruptions and breakdown of the system. I mean, I wonder, are we going to realize that it's about water treatment plants and facilities? Is it going to be about the healthcare system? Is it going to be this harsh reality in regards to the fact that a lot of the legal system is just their bread and butter is just, being able to make sure that they're getting those numbers up and that they have people that are filtering into the jail systems because there's a lot of money to be made there. Keep in mind, Saturn is about the government, right? So it's going to be about government involvement with hospitals, with prisons, with foreign places. Also, it's going to be about shadow government, people who are kind of staying hidden but trying to rule or regulate things. It's about healthcare, right? Physical and as well as spiritual. So this can be about the physical spaces that we receive care in, whether or not we're excluded. We're going to hear a lot more also about immigration, okay? I'm going to be doing a whole video on Saturn and Pisces. A lot of the stuff that I have to say I don't really feel comfortable saying on YouTube. So I plan on making that private. So I'm gonna try to do like a 2-part where one's gonna be just for people who wanna know, okay, how do I navigate this Saturn return or this Saturn transit? The other half is gonna be me talking about it. But one of the bigger concerns that I'm having is the harsh reality, right? Becoming aware of reality, Saturn in a Neptunian sign, that there is like an agenda to move people to camps, if you get what I'm saying, right? So unfortunately, if we don't learn from history, history repeats itself. And I am very confident that a lot of this is happening behind the scenes, and it's been happening for some time with some of the issues that we've been seeing with immigration and also just trafficking and things that have been going on within this country. Now it's going to unfold in terms of pushing people more in the direction of being told that they have to go to centers or they have to go to camps. So more about that when I talk about that in a private video, but I think you guys get where I'm going with that. So these are the 2 Sabian symbols. You know, you can come back to this, you can read this, especially as we see the planets hit these degrees. I will be talking about that during the retrograde, so don't worry, I'll be all over it. I'm especially interested in the days where there are no planets in Aquarius, where there's no planets in Aquarius. So there will be a short window of time where Saturn moves into Pisces, but Pluto has yet to move into Aquarius. And so I see this as like that changing of the guard. This is going to be from March 7th through the 23rd. I'm really eyeballing this particular time, a very short window before we see Pluto ingress into Aquarius. And I think that's going to be perhaps a really colorful period for showing us, okay, you know, now we're just kind of like bracing for impact right before we see the shift of Pluto moving into that sign. It's, you know, Pluto, god of the underworld, change, transformation, regeneration, death and rebirth. When Pluto changes signs, we see this. Archetypally, he's going to show his character or his energy in some ways. And I think that perhaps one of the biggest topics is going to be really reevaluating some of the direction that we're going with AI and the developments of technology. You know, Aquarius is the masses, right? It is about humanitarianism. It is about collective groups of people. It's also about technology, okay? So when we think about Pluto going into this fixed air sign, it can be about wealth, that there is going to be a wealth of new technology, that there could be wealth coming for the masses. But I also have concerns about transhumanism, about this darker side of these chat boxes and other things that are going to start developing at speeds where it's going to be really difficult for humans to kind of keep up. And whether or not potentially there is some kind of connection to what could be like almost like a tech beast behind all of this, because Pluto can be quite sinister. And the Pluto aspects are just so freaking loud this month. I mean, you're watching Pluto ingress, and the signs on the nodes are going to be squaring. We're also going to see that we will have Jupiter in the spring move into Taurus, also square Pluto. So the next few months, the Pluto energy is very, very strong. Now, yeah, that one period of time, you know, like I say, like the changing of the guards, you know, I think back to like a couple years ago, I went to go and visit the UK and got to go and see like the palace and be there when they go through the whole process where like there's the guards and the procession and everything. And then they come in and like nobody can move. You can't go in and out of the gates or anything until they're done doing their thing. But if there's nobody guarding the castle, right? There's nobody in the Aquarius zone. Is it that small moment in time where the masses wake up and they go, holy shift, like there are things happening that we know we're not doing that. We're not going in that direction. And I'm confident just with what I'm hearing from clients and what I'm seeing from other people that that's going to happen, right? Aquarius is inherently rebellious. That's what it does. It wants to go against the grain. It may suggest that there is going to be this tug of war between the masses in regards to their power and their control and the banks because of the squares that we're going to see to the north and the south node in financial signs, where people decide to make changes and they start realizing that they can actually vote with their money. And when people band together and they start saying, well, I don't necessarily, you know, need to be super consumed with, you know, making money in this fashion, or maybe I don't have the money to be able to buy food, but I do have a good or a service that I can trade. And then you start seeing this exchange, right, with other people. I've seen a lot of people who are already doing it. I think it's really cool. If you guys took any of my classes or my lectures that I had last year, I spoke very specifically about how this would bring the exchange of goods and services and almost like a return to the barter system in some senses. Now the spring equinox is going to be here, at least here in the northern hemisphere. That's something else we're going to see, and that will definitely be a chart that we're going to take a look at in a separate video. But I'm very excited because it's within 24 hours of a new moon in Aries, one of 2 new moons in Aries, which is really lighting the fire and helping us really get with the program to get active and set intentions in regards to what we are doing on a personal level. We've got 1 new moon at a cardinal point, okay, 0 degrees of Aries, the very first degree of the zodiac. In April, we're going to have a solar eclipse that's going to be at 29 degrees. So right now is a good time to pull out your chart, okay? You know where Pluto is leaving Capricorn, it's moving into Aquarius. We know where Saturn is leaving Aquarius and going into Pisces. But I want everybody to look at Aries, okay? And this is like a choo-choo train. Right? Capricorn is like, all right, what have we handled? Aquarius is like, okay, have we achieved our goals? We move to Pisces, and Pisces goes, this is what I want. I'm going to kind of get rid of the rest because I'm going into a new cycle, right? Or a new incarnation, if you believe in that. So Aries is fresh, brand new energy. It's like that nude little babe that is just ready to hit the ground and start running. And Aries energy does not know where things are going, right? It doesn't think about the end, it just thinks about the start, the beginning, that impulse, that instinctual drive to live. You know, it's a fire sign, it's about life. So sometimes it gets a little scrappy and it has to kind of find its own way. But I'm very interested to watch 2 new moons in this sign because it's essentially the universe's way of saying nothing is going to change unless people take accountability. Now that's a big theme with the North Node in Aries that we're going to see later this summer. Jupiter's still going to swing through there. We've got Jupiter and Chiron coming into a conjunction. I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening. So personal accountability and the willingness to, I think, work on our own wounds, the willingness to heal ourselves, to feel inspired, to educate ourselves. Jupiter in Aries for me has been so much about self-education and working through issues in regards to not feeling good enough, right? But yeah, that's gonna be a day to watch when we have that equinox because it's kind of like the rebalancing of things. Like you get a fresh start. So I've been saying for months, you know, since December, wait until you get to March or April to set intentions. Wait until this time because things are gonna flow better. So if you've been feeling a little under the weather, if you're getting just slimed with some of the mutable squares in mid-March, just chill. All right, they call it the Ides of March for a reason. That's usually when things get pretty hairy. And speaking of mutable squares, we're going to have quite a few of them. We're going to experience the final Mars-Neptune square. That's been a pattern that's been going on really since the fall of 2022. We saw Mars start going retrograde actually in the end of October of 2022. But if we go back in time, there were several points where we saw the Mars-Neptune squares. I talk about them in my horoscopes, but you want to go back and reflect on that point, right? Especially being that Mars is about action and it's about linear motion, you know, being assertive, getting something done. It's been an immutable air sign, so we've felt kind of like we're ricocheted all over the place in the sign of Gemini. But recently it's received some support from, you know, Mercury, from Saturn, from the Sun. So we've seen some really nice air trines. You're actually going to see some right at the end of February. I'm going to talk to you guys about that before I get into the month. Where there's a lot of support from the cosmos to have other people give us their input, to participate with others, to join with other people, to have a better understanding of where we're going. The challenge is, though, is that Mars rules the South Node, okay? So there is this sense of a South Node in Scorpio, fear, anger, you know, resentment, pain, and it hasn't gone on very well with some of the aspects to the South Node. It's almost as if some of these things have come up intentionally to kind of make these outbursts come up or make people feel like they can't hold back or they have to start kind of speaking up, especially now that Mars is direct. Mars went direct in mid-January, and it's going to come into its final square with Neptune. And when it does, it's going to be a challenging time. Okay, guys, think about some of the crazy shit that's happened over the last month. We're seeing people freaking out about weather balloons. I mean, you know it's a crazy time when you have the conspiracy theorists telling all the normies, like, no, it's not aliens. That's how you know stuff's weird right now. And I'm not saying that they're not out there, because I think that they are, but I don't think that they're out there in that capacity. I think that There's been a lot of smoke and mirrors and intention to, you know, get people's attention off of other major events that are taking place out in the world. Whether you're looking at the Epstein stuff or the things that are going on in regards to some of these documents that are being unveiled about high-level bankers that are kind of tied up in that scandal. All of this like warmongering that's going on, but people aren't realizing just the amount of money that is actually, I think, being laundered through Ukraine. And the fact that when everybody is looking in one direction, there are major decisions about our rights and our freedoms that are potentially in jeopardy and being given up to organizations that are global that we did not vote for. Okay? So don't get distracted with some of the stuff that you guys are going to hear about. Unfortunately, when that Mars square Neptune is perfecting, the Sun and Mercury is going to be there too. So that means that there's going to be some wild stuff on the internet. There's going to be some crazy stuff that is being spewed out into the news cycles. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a financial advisor. I guess I have to kind of say that, but I feel like I've been pretty accurate thus far with some of the things that have been coming in the world. And I'm very confident that at some point over the next 2 months, there is going to be this incentive to really scare people into thinking that there is a new virus and that it's not safe to go out or to be by water or air. Okay, there's going to be some elemental thing. We're going to see some extreme weather, which I personally, on a personal level, do believe is being manipulated. You may not believe that, but that's okay. Blizzard watches in Los Angeles. I mean, like, what the hell is what's going on right now? Manipulation is what we see with Neptune. Okay, and when you throw Mars into the mix, there's drives to go in one direction, and then Neptune is going to say, no, 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 we don't want you going there. Don't touch that. Like, let's just create some distractions over here. So watch for that. Be careful what you're sharing. Be careful when it comes to also videos and screens. There's going to be a lot of scams and a lot of things that are going to be falsified information and manipulated videos and possibly even like AI and things that are being generated. That it's going to be really very difficult to decipher. And I think that I see fear and paranoia when I see squares between Gemini, which rules media, and Pisces, which rules health, psychological, things that are kind of hidden. Yeah, I mean, call me crazy, but I think that there is going to be this huge push to scare people into thinking that there's going to be new reasons to have some kind of social limitations or lockdowns. Okay, so we've got 6 planetary ingresses this month. Mercury's moving into Pisces, where honestly, it's going to be hard to find the words. You're just going to feel the emotions. Sometimes we can have a tendency to get confused. Sometimes we can get choked up, but we can be very tapped in. So to better work with that energy and to stay grounded, I really recommend meditation. You'll see when it makes its ingress into Aries that we now have a better understanding of where we need to go. But with Mercury in Pisces, I recommend reflecting. Saturn's going to move into Pisces on the 7th. So like I said, 2.5 years of that. I did do a Saturn through the signs video if you guys want to check that out. I'm going to talk about it more in depth as we get closer to that date. I'm very excited to see Venus leave Aries. I've had enough of it already. Venus moving into Taurus in one of her home signs. So that's going to be a wonderful shift, especially considering the touch on the North Node. A little bit of sweetness with the sextiles from Saturn, and then she will be moving and inching towards her conjunction to Uranus, but still it's a reason to celebrate. On the 19th, we're going to see Mercury enter into the sign of Aries, and I would advise everybody to just really meditate on things or wait before making drops or big announcements until this ingress happens. This is going to be a much more self-focused, my ideas, I think I'm doing type of vibe. On the 20th, the sun will enter Aries, so that's going to be the astrological new year. That's the time that you really want to be focusing on getting ready to set intentions. That new moon is very potent on the 21st. On the 23rd, Pluto enters into the sign of Aquarius, and like I said, it's going to be there for about 2.5 months. It'll retrograde. We're going to see Pluto go in and out of these degrees from 27 of Capricorn to about 0 degrees of Aquarius before it finally settles in closer to 2025. So we get like a preview, right? The last 2 or 3 years, I've been like, what's going to happen in those 2 months, man? Like something's going to happen that's going to show everybody where we're totally transforming something moving forward. And on the 25th of the month, Mars is going to move into the sign of Cancer. So that's going to be actively getting us to think about our emotions, our home, our private life. Unfortunately, this is Mars's detriment. So I do feel like it's going to make us a little bit more crabby. We will see some nice aspects. We're going to see some support. There'll be some trines to Saturn. We're going to start to see that also sextile with the North Node as well as Uranus. So perhaps some of the changes that we're making, the action that we're taking in regards to our home and where we're living and protecting our space or our families will be symbolic of some of the changes that are happening in the world. And yeah, we'll see what happens with that ingress. We've got 2 lunations this month. On the 7th, we're going to have a full moon in Virgo at 16 degrees. That one is going to be one to watch. Actually, that's the video I'm going to be putting out for you guys this next week. It's going to be in opposition to Mercury, and we're going to see all these mutable squares. So it's going to be quite confusing, and I do feel like it's going to be a difficult time to use reason, even though it's definitely going to highlight Saturn because of the opposition to Saturn, but it's going to be hard to really make sense of like what's going on. On the 21st, we'll have that new moon in Aries at 0 degrees. And like I said, remember, it's one of 2 new moons. So please take a look at where Aries is in your chart. All right, so I want to give you guys the tail end of February just very quickly. Basically, there's not a lot going on here, the end of the week. There's mostly just lunar transits. The only thing we're really going to see is that there's going to be a conjunction between Mercury and Saturn, and Venus is coming into conjunction, getting really, really close there to Jupiter, but that's going to be at the beginning of March. So if we take a look at the week ahead, starting today, happy Sunday, the 26th. Obviously, we're going to see later in the day, going into the afternoon, the moon is going to ingress into Gemini. And I'm discussing this because of the way that the month ends, okay? So when the moon goes into Gemini, we start focusing more on Gemini things. Contracts, communications, documents, cars, phone calls, text messages, moving around. It will feel like a much more social kind of day. I'm liking the sextiles to Jupiter and Venus. I'm also liking the fact that it's going to be inching its way towards Mars. So it makes me feel like Sunday, Monday, going into Tuesday, very productive days. But we're not seeing much other than some of these lunar transits. When we get to the 27th, so this is going to be Monday morning, the moon is coming into conjunction with Mars. So just be advised, okay? There is a sense of we can get kind of short, we can be really quick, we can be, speeding, trying to get to work. There is some visibility issues because the moon is coming into an opening square with the sun. So this is the first square, the lunar square, since we had that new moon in Pisces. So it does represent like, oh, there's some hiccups. We got to work kind of through this. Like, what are we doing? And mutable signs deal with change better than any other type of sign, in my opinion. So the square you can kind of navigate. We want to be looking for those sweet spots, right? I'm all about making lemonade with astrology. So I feel like the sextiles to all of this in Aries is accountability, action, standing up and doing something, right? Moon conjunct Mars, that Mars is still relating back to all of this energy in Aries where we're speaking up, we're doing our service to connect with other people. And we're going to see the moon keep moving through. Looks like it's going to make that connection to Mars, and that's going to be closer to the PM hours on Monday. And then overnight, it's going to continue to move through Gemini, but when we wake up in the morning on Tuesday, the 28th, the moon is coming into a trine with Mercury. Okay, so Tuesday, great working day, great day to pick up the phone, make the phone call, schedule the meeting, send the email, like do all that stuff. Like if you got to plan something, travel something, whatever, not only do you have the moon in harmony to the planet that is connected to Gemini, but you've also got the support and the stability here of Saturn. Now Saturn's at 29 degrees. So it's some of the things you commit to, some of the things that you say, some of the actions that you participate in will have long-standing karmic repercussions. But likely, if you've used this energy correctly throughout the transit of Mars retrograde, now you're ready to say, okay, I'm going to launch the business. I'm going to, have the talk with my friend. I'm going to focus on the goal. Like all planets are direct until mid-April. So regardless of what squares and other things are happening, we don't have any retrogrades. It's like, it's full steam ahead. So don't let some of these squares throw you off. Share, communicate, and when in doubt, write it out. Get the ideas out because this is going to be a very kind of like mental type of day. Not wild about the moon square Neptune, but I think that we can avoid some of the pitfalls and issues in regards to communication and errors and visibility issues by communicating, you know, telling people what exactly is on your mind and what you're hoping on doing. Double and triple check things, right? You know, just follow up with people so you're making sure that you're not letting anything fall through the cracks. The moon's going to keep moving through Gemini really into the afternoon, and it'll finish up by a trine to Saturn in the evening hours, okay? So something is kind of solidified or decided upon is kind of the feeling that I'm getting here. We go to then March 1st, so it's a short month. Just wanted to get you guys through that week. And let's take a look at now some of the transits that I would really like to speak on. We're going to start first with the 2nd. There's a couple days where there's a lot going on. So if you need to know these dates, I'll give them to you now. The 2nd, the 16th, the 17th, and the 30th. Those are the more kind of loud days. All right, so on the 2nd, we're gonna see Mercury conjunct Saturn at 29 degrees. And I did a video on this. I talked about how when we see 29, 29, 29, there are things that are being like locked in. I mean, think of like just pouring cement in some of these things. Now you wanna sign a contract, you need to agree to something, anything like that, that's wonderful energy because Mercury is the mind. In Aquarius, it's the masses, okay? So this is about mass information getting around to other people, people becoming aware of something. This is all also in a Saturn-based sign, and Saturn's about to move. So it's like, oh, this is happening. This is where we start to kind of realize, oh, there's gonna be limitation or control over the internet, over energy. There might be a sense of something getting ready to be decided upon. I don't know, but this to me seems pretty definitive, because there's no real coming back from this. Saturn's not going to retrograde back to this. Saturn's going into Pisces, it's going to stay. So I'm watching what's going to be happening with rules and regulations in regards to energy, the internet, and just what's getting around and what people are kind of like realizing and potentially even sharing. We're going to have Mercury then enter into Pisces. So then that's going to break. And we're going to see Jupiter and Venus conjunct. It's like, this is like a sweet and salty aspect. I feel like Mercury Saturn can be so easy to just like get in your head and be like, oh, this is not working, this is not working, this is not working. And getting really negative kind of mindset. If the world is crazy, take time to separate yourself, focus on meditation, okay? You got the moon that's gonna be in a trine to the sun as well as Neptune. And with Jupiter and Venus, which is about a very spiritual, magnificent, magical moment, it's at a 12. So it also talks about what we learn about consciously taking time to focus on being by ourselves and healing ourselves, and also ritual, right? Meditation, offerings, things that we're doing. You know, Venus is not totally happy being in Aries. It's a difficult expression. And I think that with the conjunction to Jupiter, it magnifies that. And Venus is kind of the meat in the sandwich between Jupiter and Chiron. And Chiron says, that hurts. And Jupiter says, I'm gonna make that bigger. And Venus goes, yeah, I'm gonna show love in the most like extreme kind of direct, masculine, passionate way that I can. Oh, and by the way, the moon's gonna be in Cancer, so it's gonna square all that. So I think that what we're going to start to realize is that sometimes the inability to work through our own wounds has, like I said, a ripple effect that's going to affect other people, right? Collectively. It can be a day where there's more issues in relationships. It can be a day where people start to learn more about their health, or they're learning more about their own personal rights, or perhaps even like freedoms. If you are a Venus or a Jupiter related chart, so if you're a Taurus or a Libra rising, if you're a Sag or a Pisces rising, might be a little sweeter for you because you've got a benefic that's meeting with another benefic. But if you are a Capricorn or Aquarius rising, if you are a Gemini or a Virgo rising, you're going to have a little bit more of a difficult time with the Saturn Mercury conjunction. I do feel like that's going to be about a commitment for you guys. Okay, so I talk about that on my horoscopes. Go check that out. Opportunities for big love, big healing. And I think that I see like the Venus-Jupiter-Chiron conjunction is ripping off the Band-Aid. And that if we do consciously rip off the Band-Aid and make the decision to finally acknowledge the wound, we have the opportunity to be able to heal. All right, so we're gonna go now to the 6th of the month. And on the 6th, we're gonna see Sun sextile Uranus in Taurus. So we've got the Sun here in Pisces, which is receptive, emotional, intuitive, kind of private. It's at a 15, so it's definitely about our thoughts. Really powerful day to be focusing on meditating. I feel like, I know that I sound like a broken record, but with some of the planets moving through Pisces, it's like we're gonna feel as if things really do need to wind down and be leveled off before we start anew. And with the mutable squares, things don't make sense. So you want to be able to work with all of these spiritual sensitive energies and the sextiles to the North Node and also Uranus to ground some of that stuff out. Mercury trine the South Node, so we're releasing and letting go of things that have been painful. And on this day, we're coming into the full moon energy. That's going to be in Gemini. But Mercury and the moon are going to oppose each other, and that kind of sucks because Virgo's ruled by Mercury. So there's a sense of like, I need facts and details, and Mercury's like out to lunch, right? It's like hanging out in the swimming pool, smoking the joint. So I think it's important to turn inward and reflect if things aren't really making sense, okay? That sextile between the Sun and Uranus also suggests that the physical reacts very differently when we're doing the conscious work in regards to shifting the mental or the emotional state. Now, the very next day, we're going to see Saturn enter into Pisces. I would consider this a loud day. Saturn enters Pisces. The moon comes into an opposition with the Sun. We see that full moon that's going to be in Virgo, ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is sandwiched between Saturn, which is restricting, and the Sun, so it's combust. So it's like our minds are on fire in regards to fear porn and what we potentially may or may not have and what we need to be fearful of. Virgo is about health. It's about the service industry. It's about pets. It's going to also be about, I think, dietary things. It could also be about our physical experience, right? And or crisis. And with the opposition to Pisces, remember the full moon is it's a reflection of what's going on here. Okay, if we have all these planets hanging out in Pisces, to me it's looking like it's creating a situation that's being projected. Oh, there's this crisis. You know, this is what we're seeing on screens. Okay, Pisces is screens. Even though the moon's going to trine Uranus, okay, you know, it's still factored into this crappy mutable T-square, and Mars is the focal point, which is going to be about anger and conversations and keyboard warriors, and everybody's got an opinion, and everybody now has become like a specialist in weather balloons and pharmaceuticals. And I mean, I'll give some people credit. The last 2 or 3 years, a lot of people have learned a lot of things, a lot of terms about health and also law, and also about finances and resources, and we've had to. But this to me seems very confusing and kind of bombarding, and it's not a day that things are going to make a lot of sense. So having the ruler that's going to be technically, you know, in a position where it doesn't function as well, we have to be mindful of the facts and where we're getting our information from. Then we're going to have on the 11th, Venus will sextile Mars and Gemini. I like this. Now we've got Venus in harmony with Mars. Okay, so we've got the North Node ruler, Venus, the South Node ruler, Mars. Interesting that Venus is moving out of that conjunction with Chiron and Jupiter. It's sextiling Mars. So we kind of feel like if we're taking action, we're being direct and forward, we're able to, you know, see things kind of move forward. So we've got the future and also past issues that we're working through, communicating through, kind of working itself out. I find it interesting that we're going to see the moon in Libra just the day before on the 10th. That's going to square Pluto and oppose Venus. And then the moon will conjunct the South Node. So there is this theme of like releasing, letting go, like loss. When the moon's in Scorpio, there is inevitably going to be this theme of what are we afraid of? What are we losing? Like what's dying off? And I just want to let you guys know that's setting the stage for these squares between Mars and Neptune. Okay. Then on the 14th, we're going to see the third Mars in Gemini square Neptune and Pisces. So this is the third one. It's going to be perfecting at 25 degrees, which is an Aries degree. So I do think it's going to be about manipulation of videos and images that pertain to war. I also think that we may see stuff in regards to manipulation in war-related things, either by water or by air. Okay, so planes hovering over, like coastal cities or bases or things like that. And the media just like running with it, because Mars is in that opening square to Neptune. And here we have Mercury and the Sun and Neptune. Like these days, the mid-March where Mercury and the Sun and Neptune are all conjunct, bust out your tarot cards, go into meditation, zen out, do some journaling, rest and recuperate, focus on organizing, an altar space. Focus on, reading something that's going to be more magical and kind of mysterious, or be reading up on, old spiritual or sacred texts, or focusing on anything but reality, as much as I hate to say that, because we're not going to get a lot out of this transit. With Mars in opposition to the moon and that square, so it's going to make all of this the focal point. I almost guarantee you there is going to be a whole agenda mid-March to just scare people into, oh my God, this scenario is happening and like we're all screwed. And I don't think it's real. Maybe it's just me personally, but I feel like one more virus comes out, one more whatever, I'm going to be like, I just don't care anymore. Like I'm not going to buy into that, because it's not going to be something that's going to limit my or lower my vibration, because I think that that's kind of the agenda. That's the incentive right now, to do that and scare people so we feel disconnected from each other, from our bodies, but also from source. And so if there's anything I know, all of these sextiles that I've seen over these last few years between Pisces and also Taurus, the North Node, Uranus, we'll see it with Jupiter soon, is that we become disassociated. We're like zombied out. We're disassociated from reality, from people who are hungry and on the streets, or from people who are dying, or, we're disassociating from our own bodies. And that's the point, is if you become that distracted, then you're easily kind of manipulated. So we don't want to do that. Take the baths, do the scrubbing down with the salt, whatever you got to do, let the tears out. We are going to be a lot more emotional and sensitive, and there can be a lot of very confusing energies for us mentally. Mercury and the Sun and Neptune. Now, it's really great for dream decoding and, like I said, being able to work with divination. I think it can be very inspirational. I think with Saturn being in this part of the chart, it's also saying that there's a need to kind of reflect on some of this stuff and use that for internal guidance for where we're going. If I go back in time, just to give you guys the reference of the last few times that we saw this square, it looks like the first one was taking place right around mid-October of 2022, around 23 degrees. And that hung around for a little bit. And then it's come in for the square here again in March. Hold on a second. So there was another one in between there. Where was it? There we go. So mid-October, mid-November, and then now we're going to see this in mid-March. Okay, so just so you guys can go back and you can look at what was kind of going on during those times. And Mars does rule media in Gemini, things that you have in your hand, right? How angry people are getting about, like what's being said and what's going on. And you're going to see a lot with Saturn and Mercury coming together with like a tightening of the communications, or, issues in regards to access to power or internet or whatever to share with other people. Hearing about this stuff recently, in the media, I mean, there is definitely an intention, at least in some countries, to limit certain independent media and people from having access to it. Now, there are some people that have VPNs that are doing that, but that makes you kind of wonder, right? There's also push and incentive for some countries to have more involvement and authority in determining or deeming who is considered a journalist, right? So essentially, this is potentially the end of the free press, which is a very dangerous thing. Oh, which reminds me, hold on, I want to read you guys something that I saved. And I was like, this is good. I need to talk about this on my channel, because this was a comment that I read that somebody made, which kind of goes back to this. Okay, so information, right? Whether it's books or podcasts or blogs or independent media or YouTube channels, I, for one, am going to make more of a conscious effort. I have a lot of them, but I am going to start focusing more on buying and purchasing hardcover books, like actual real books, not Audible books, as much as I love listening to books. I feel like part of Pluto going into Aquarius is that power is going to be with those who have information. And so in this day and age, when we have everything that's kind of on the cloud, it concerns me that we don't physically have anything. It concerns me that if we don't have anything to go back and reference, if books are being changed, if they're being banned, how are we ever going to be able to uphold history and talk about what's happened in the past when things are constantly changing? So some people say it's the Mandela effect. Some people say it's just an outright attack on information. But I thought this was really interesting. I saved this. Somebody said this in a post the other day. If you look at the history of groups that have burned books to prevent certain ideas from being presented, whether good or evil, correct or lies, various religious and right across the millennia, Roman Empire and multiple emperors, monarchs, the Nazis, fascists, and both early and modern, and heads of state. Name one category of the people you would trust to control or rule you. Think about that. It's probably going to be a good idea to have physical copies of information. It's probably going to be a good idea to learn how to cast a manual chart, right? Because I feel like there is going to be some issues with people having foresight into what's going on astrologically. I think it's going to be a good idea to also have traditional books in literature, and not just in terms of, you know, what's considered to be the classics, but more than that, going further back, talking about, you know, ancient civilizations and historical periods, and also things in regards to the body, because I think a lot of things are going to be changed. So I don't know, maybe we're going to hear more about this book banning or information banning or surveillance of media and information, right? So be careful in regards to what you're signing up for, especially read the fine print, because there can be a sense of giving some of your rights to freedom or information away. I've been like really big about the Freedom of Information Act. It was not something I knew was a thing. You can like request anything basically, and you have to get a response. So if you want to, unless it's something that's heavily classified, you can request information pretty much on anything, which I have found very interesting. I've been digging through some of that stuff recently. Okay, so we see the third and final square on the 14th. Then we're going to move to the 15th, and this is kind of factored into that transit as well. The sun will come into conjunction with Neptune, okay? So the Sun-Neptune conjunction, that's going to be taking place at 25 degrees. Looks like we're also having a Mercury Cazimi. When is that happening? So the sun conjuncts. I know that the Mercury, it looks like the Mercury Cazimi was supposed to be happening. Come on, Mercury. Oh, right here. 26 degrees on the 17th. Okay, I'll go back to the 16th first because I got to show you guys something. But yeah, that's another transit that I did not mention. Sun conjunct Neptune on the 15th. Spacey, emotional, sensitive, intuitive, receptive, empathic. Lower energy day, but a day where also there can be a sense of becoming aware of the glory plan and the sacrifices that we make for the things that we need. Then you're going to see on the 16th a very active day. Okay, so Venus in Aries squares Pluto in Capricorn at 29 degrees. So you want to be watching March 16th and 17th as this square perfects. We've got the North Node Lord at 29 degrees. We're going to see Jupiter hit this degree. That's the degree we're going to have an eclipse at. It's the last degree of Aries, so it is very passionate. And it's right before it ingresses into Taurus, where she becomes more calm. And Venus square Pluto, those themes are, you know, manipulation, fear, obsession, you know, power struggles. And 29 just kind of adds to that. So that's a day where you want to watch for manipulation in finances, resources, you know, jealousy. These things can kind of pop up, but there can also be confrontational or dangerous things that can go on, especially for women. I don't like saying that, but between the Venus square Pluto and the Mercury, Neptune, Sun, I'll anticipate that there's probably going to be a really big news story in the media, not just in regards to storms and flooding, we're going to see that, but perhaps like a really significant missing persons case, as much as I hate to say that. Or someone that disappears and there's some kind of like lovers quarrel thing kind of connected to that. We might see that. Same day then, Venus enters into Taurus, which is like so much more calm. And it's going to be interesting having Venus conjunct the North Node, because it's really saying you need that sweetness, you need that groundingness. Buy the flowers, right? Have the honey, Go with what feels natural and stable and secure. It's really, really great for everybody to have Venus in that placement as it's on the North Node. This will be the last time Venus touches the North Node in Taurus, by the way, before the North Node goes into Aries. And we're going to be focusing from mid-2023 all the way to 2025 on Mars-related things. Okay, so enjoy the sweetness, especially between now and May. Mercury will conjunct Neptune in Pisces. So we've just got this like really confusing, this is not great for clarity, for making long-term plans, for knowing which end is up. So you want to lean more into, I think, what's going on with Taurus and maybe the trines that you're going to see between the moon and Uranus. So it's like, okay, we got to find ways to stay grounded and be practical. And when things feel chaotic, it's to like really align that energy and get calm. Don't freak out, because a lot of it's not going to be real, whatever is being kind of injected into the news cycle. And then we'll see the Sun square Mars, which does feel combative, confrontational. I feel like this is going to be a day where there's falsified information and things going on in regards to war that is feeling forced, but also things that are coming out to kind of disrupt and keep people distracted from what's really happening in the world, okay? Because with Mercury being here, Neptune being here, I'm like, what's going on in secret places? What people are meeting and making big decisions that we're not aware of? Where are there people talking about the fact that, you know, we need to like hide again in our houses? I mean, I know that sounds crazy, but that's kind of the feeling that I'm getting. And some kind of mobilization, we might also see that also with military. Okay, so that's the 16th. We get to the 17th, and then Mercury comes into the square with Mars, which I feel like is just Mercury in Pisces square Mars and Gemini makes me feel like you can't really believe much of anything that you're hearing that day, but with the Sun and Neptune being there as well, this is going to be like, you know, a conspiracy theorist stream, these transits. And with the Moon coming into conjunction with Pluto as well, there is some kind of deep-seated, powerful, fearful, kind of strategic meetings and things that are going on. That's all funneling into a sextile here. So there's definitely, we're going to hear about being like, oh, we're all meeting on this. We're sitting down and talking about this situation and how we handle it, how we're gonna navigate it. Sun conjunct Mercury in Pisces, really great day for dreams, meditations, reflections, being tapped in. It can feel very romantic, very otherworldly. Being by water, working with water, magic, meditation, sound waves and sound therapy can be helpful, sound baths. And then we're also going to see that Venus is going to sextile Saturn. So that's a lovely aspect, especially being that Pisces is Venus's exaltation. Venus is now in an opening sextile to Saturn. So it's, what do we do with this time? You know, what do we create? What do we grow? So I look at this and I go, great time to start getting ready to plant your guys' gardens. Great time to start strategizing what you want to grow, where you're going to grow it. Great time to say, hey, you know, I'm creating or carving out some time to be focusing on, you know, learning culinary skills or learning more about pottery. It's about design and creation and what you do with that alone time, right? Saturn is the skeleton. Kind of, it creates that foundation for ultimately what becomes physical. So this is a great manifestation day as well. Be working strong with like water and earth elements. On the 18th, Mercury in Pisces will sextile Pluto in Capricorn. And that's an interesting day because we're going to have another 29, and 29 degrees of Pisces is connected to Shiat, which does deal with some heavier topics in regards to poisoning, mental health, you know, disappearances, death, suicide. That sextile makes me feel like there can be an opportunity to just feel very tapped in, like super tapped in. Also, we're getting ready to come into that new moon phase. So you're going to feel from the 18th all the way until the 20th, it's just like clearing out, you know, flushing things out. Things are going to feel like things are getting a little weird in the last degrees of the zodiac. Thankfully, we're going to see that moon that starts coming in for a trine with Mars. So once again, opportunities to communicate, Sextiles to Jupiter is about creating incentive to just get out there and do something. Venus is going to touch on the North Node. The 18th, the 19th, the 20th, Venus on the North Node, guys. In spite of all the other things that are going on, wear your crystals, ground your energy out, go and do some yoga out in the grass, right? Go be out in nature, like focus on having that grounding meal, things that are going to be keeping you grounded in reality. On the 19th, Mercury enters Aries, and great time to be, you know, getting ready to speak your mind. There we go. The sun is still behind it. So I kind of get the impression that even though that's going to be like, I want to run, I want to share, I want to tell people, like I would be waiting until after that new moon on the 21st, because there's still quite a bit of things with these lunar aspects where the moon is still clearing stuff out. A conjunction to Saturn, the Neptune, and the sun. Just hold tight a little bit. As Mercury gets closer to Jupiter, we're going to see opportunities for positive announcements and things that we're sharing. And individuals are going to be more active and also exercising and communicating and sharing their right to have freedom of speech. On the 20th is when we're going to see the equinox. So the moment that the sun moves into into Aries. Look at all these lunar transits. This is why I'm saying wait until the new moon, because the sun and Mercury are going to be conjunct in Aries. Love that exalted sun. I love Mercury and Chiron and Jupiter, and people are able to kind of speak out and share. But the moon is still sandwiched between Saturn and Neptune. So we really do benefit by waiting to set intentions and do all of the things that we want to take action on closer to the 21st. Nevertheless, when we look at this chart, we'll look at it closer to mid-month. We got a lot going on here. Mars is still kind of in a square with Neptune. It's coming out of the square, but it's within a 2-degree orb, so there still is some confusion. Stellium of planets in Aries, which is get going, we're gonna do this, let's go, we're doing it now, which is also all coming into a square with Mars. So there is gonna be a lot going on between mid-March and mid-June. I mean, like crazy. So we'll talk about that, but really it all falls on the individual. And God bless the Venus North Node conjunction, because it's really saying stability, love, security, foundations, you know, getting back down to basics, really connecting to our natural kind of inherent need for stability and love. That's what's going to pave the way for making things possible. Sextile to Saturn, very supporting. On the 23rd, it's the news that everybody's waiting for. This is going to be Pluto moving into Aquarius. And so many people have asked me, do you think something will happen that day? And my answer is yes, I do. And I'm not basing this off of Pluto being at 0 degrees. I'm basing it off of the fact that the moon will ingress into Taurus, where it's very comfortable, but it immediately squares Pluto at 0 degrees. Then it touches on the North Node, which is like, what do I need for security? And we're also going to see that the nodes are starting to form a square with Pluto. So guys, for the next few months, right? Let's say between now and like mid-May, right? Anytime the moon goes into Taurus, Leo, or Scorpio, pay attention. Very similar to what we've seen with the Saturn-Uranus squares. And this is an opening square to Pluto. So this is like, whoa, there is a breakdown in some system, or people are pushing back and they're saying no. I think we're going to see in some places where they're really piloting and doing all this work with the CBDCs. Enough people freak out and rebel and burn banks to the ground and do other things, which they may do. I think there's going to be this realization that we can't physically give up cash. We can't. We're also going to see that, you know, the human spirit is resilient. They're going to grow food. They're going to exchange. They're going to share. Right? That's what's going to happen. You're going to see more people who are willing to break bread and connect and help feed their neighbors, and you're going to see people who are going to be fighting in the streets. They're going to want you to think that. But I don't actually think that's what's going to happen. But yes, I do believe something will happen. You want to watch from the 23rd to the 25th. As the moon swings through Taurus, it conjuncts Uranus. That's when we're going to see some of the craziness. Some of it's also going to be the impending Mars square the sun too, which also feels just agitating, to be honest with you, to see an exalted sun, and you got Jupiter there, and then we're going to see Mars go into detriment. That's going to be some interesting energy, brand new stuff. We're going to realize there's 2 areas of our life that's completely changing. So yeah, that Pluto in Aquarius, I'm watching it. Then we're going to see Mars going to Cancer on the 25th. Boom. 0 degrees. 0 degrees of the cardinal signs, guys. 0 of Aries, 0 of Cancer, 0 of Libra, 0 of Capricorn. This is also a time to watch because this is saying there's brand new beginnings in regards to war within the homeland. Okay, America has, we're just completing our 3rd Mars return here soon. We're going to have Mars go through all of our Cancer planets. I anticipate there's going to be much more aggravation in this feeling of, oh, we're going off into this thing, where there is going to potentially be escalating conflict. You know, I've said before, we see more stuff with like shark attacks, issues with, you know, violent sea storms. We also see issues with like house fires. I mean, I don't like saying this, but these can be things that we see with Mars in Cancer. Conflict with family, more people suddenly moving, you know, fighting for home or family-related rights. And because the sun is in Aries, we got to pay attention to what's going on with the moon. So that ingress, you know, we're going to have Mars there for a couple of weeks, but I think it's going to be felt more as the moon and Mars are coming into conjunction on the 28th, right? And it's going to square the sun, which is going to feel a little combative and crabby and emotional. Same day when we see that Mercury is in conjunction with Jupiter, which is like people speaking out. No, you're not touching this. No, I'm not going in that direction. This is my safe zone. Do not pass this boundary. Mars trine Saturn. So wonderful day to acknowledge and work with your emotions. Guys, when we have planets in water signs, when we have Saturn in Pisces, we learn about collective sadness. We learn about collective releasing and letting go. And when Mars and the moon come together and they trine Saturn, that's the way out of the sun square, right? The way out is to go, okay, we need to focus on how this actually brings us together. I think a lot of people are going to realize that through loss and releasing and letting go, there is that opportunity to bring people closer together and work together, right? And there's so many new things starting with all these planets in Aries. It's crazy. Mercury, Jupiter, Chiron, what I've learned about the mistakes that I've made, or what I've learned about, you know, the way that I don't always communicate and take other people into consideration, what have you. I like this grand water trine that's forming here as well. You guys got to listen to your intuition. You got to listen to your emotions. Emotions are going to start rising up, and it's going to be something that we have to acknowledge, because Saturn and Pisces can represent this deep-seated sense of emotions that have been repressed that we haven't dealt with. Whether it's grief or it's fear, right? Grief is a weird thing. It comes in waves. It can come, you know, years down the road. And if you don't deal with things, they'll sneak back up on you, right? It'll creep up on you and kind of come out of nowhere. And I think we're going to see some of that. And then finally on the 30th, we're going to see Mars in Cancer perfect that trine to Saturn. So it'll be kind of in action for a few days. It's coming for the trine for the South Node as well. And the highly anticipated Venus conjunct Uranus. Venus rules the North Node. It's conjunct Uranus, right? Which is connected to Aquarius, where Pluto is. And then the nodes are moving in for the square with Pluto. So really the end of March until about July, there's a lot of pressure. At a 16, so this is a Cancer degree. Hi, Cancer in opposition to Pluto. Mars is in Cancer. Venus, Uranus. Housing market stuff, guys. I think this is housing market stuff. I think people are going to start learning more about their rights in regards to land. I'm very concerned about some of the stuff I'm hearing about the potential negotiations with the World Health Organization. I'm confident, and I'm trying to stay optimistic that it's not going to go in that direction where we're potentially losing the ability to have the right to remain in our homes or have control over our land. It's a scary time to potentially be in a situation where outside governments are telling you whether or not pandemics are deeming your space safe, and what determines what a pandemic is, whether they're saying it's an infodemic or it's a health epidemic or a health pandemic, whatever. It's just, to me, it's all crazy. And this is kind of that turning point, I think, with Pluto and Aquarius, where collectively a lot of people are going to wake up and they're going to go, no, I'm not letting this happen to me, to my family. I'm not leaving my home. And I'm not saying this to kind of stir people up. I'm just letting you guys know emotions are going to be what's kind of guiding the way in this next month, and where you're feeling emotionally, instinctually, this rise that's going to happen. You got to listen to it and work with Mars trine Saturn. There's a way to be able to use your emotions to clearly define your boundaries whether you're doing it out in the world or you're doing it within your home or your private life. But Venus, Uranus, disruptions in relationships, right? Loud patterns, pops of color, changes in regards to what you're doing for fun, for date night, changes and things that are going to be going on also with resources, money. We're going to see lots of fluctuation with Pluto going into Aquarius because it's about wealth, but also the nodes that are squaring. I think we're going to start to really realize the significance of the very obvious wealth imbalance in this world, and just how many people are now past their breaking point and they're no longer willing to kind of be in a position where they're giving power away. And so this is the day that you want to watch the markets. This is the day that you want to watch what's going on with cryptocurrency. This is the day where you may feel inclined to break free, or that you want out of a system, or that you want to leave a bank, or that you want to leave a job, or that you want to go crazy and maybe like run off and do something very unusual, like getting married suddenly, or maybe you experience love at first sight. We can see that with Venus, Uranus. But I'll tell you that Uranus is very disruptive for Venus, and that you don't have a lot of other supporting things going on at the time of this moon. The time of this conjunction. I'm looking at that moon in opposition to Pluto, and I'm like, oh man, literally it's going to be like, that's the breaking point. Just hours later when the moon opposes Pluto, this will be in the PM hours of the 30th, and then it comes into a square with the nodes out of 4. Keeps repeating itself. 4, emotions, Cancer, past, roots, where we come from. So we're going to be hearing more and more about threats in regards to feeling threatened within our home or our emotional state. If we let that happen, right? If we let that happen. Once again, this is just the brief overview for March. We'll be breaking this down. I'm going to be doing more videos on Pluto. We're going to talk a little bit more about Saturn. I'm going to probably do a video where I take you guys all through stuff in regards to Mars and Cancer. So we'll be doing that. The solstice chart, there's a lot of stuff to talk about this month. I'm actually really looking forward to it because it's new energy. Right? I've been talking about Saturn and Uranus squares for 2 years. I'm ready to talk about Saturn and Pisces and Jupiter, being in conjunction to all these Aries planets. The energy shifts significantly to where, yeah, there still is breakdown in Aquarius and also in Saturn, but what are you doing about it? Right? Look at Aries. What are you doing about it? And where is that collective breakdown or kind of wrapping up is presenting you with opportunities to start new, right? And so astrology is like patterns and cycles. You see this repetitively. In my mind, Saturn just went into Pisces, but I'm thinking about when Saturn and Neptune in 2.5 years go into Aries, and I want to be ready when that happens and know that I'm self-sustainable, that I'm going to be healthy, that I can take care of myself, so that way I'm really ready for some of those transits. And I like the fact that Pluto is going to be in Aquarius. I think that people are going to see the sinister side of some of the things that have been going on with technology and also our freedoms these last few years. They might wake up. And I also am I'm indecisive. I'm indifferent, I guess I should say, about Saturn and Pisces. On one hand, I think that it is time for people to collectively kind of mourn and heal and release and let go. I am optimistic it's going to be positive for, innovations in mental health. I think we're also going to learn more about spirituality and the power of prayer. But I also know that Saturn is intentionally trying to repress. So it's going to try to keep people from meeting and praying together. It's going to try to keep people from having faith. It's going to try to keep people also from being able to do work in holistic fields or in other realms. Let's just leave it that way. So it's going to try to limit things that could actually free our spirit. But once again, like I said, the human spirit is very resilient, and I don't think that that's going to happen. I'm just really focused on what I'm working on and doing behind the scenes, and doing my part, knowing that if I'm doing that, other people are going to do theirs, right? We're going to have readings on Fridays, so you can meet me here every Friday at 5 o'clock Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern. We do alternating readings. We do tarot or astrology, so if you're going through it, you want to check in and get a reading, we're doing donation-based readings. Keep it affordable and make it possible, so if people need help, they can get help. We always post the links early, so if you guys want to sign up, you can. If you want to book a personal reading with me, I'd love to chat with you. My sessions are a combination of what I see clairvoyantly, working with the tarot as well as the astrology to help guide you and let you know what's going on in your chart. Solar returns, election astrology, synastry, you name it. That's what I do. I have full and half-hour sessions available. If you go to my website below at beyondtheveiltarot.com, you're going to be able to see my calendar. You can get on the books with me. Just opened May, so we've got like May and June that's opening up for readings. And yeah, I guess I will see you guys throughout this month ahead. Let me know. We've seen so much growth. It's so awesome. Those horoscopes are doing really well. If you haven't seen them, check them out. I talk about this for all the 12 signs, the most important transits. And please do make sure you're subscribed. Give me a thumbs up. You can leave me a comment below. Any interaction with the channel is really helpful. It really helps the algorithm kind of pick up and get more of this content out there. It also makes it possible for me to keep creating this long form content for you guys and presenting it in the highest quality that we can. We're a 2-person team, so there's a lot of work that goes into producing this and creating this kind of content every week. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel, for liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. I will see you next week. Enjoy the month of March. Take care.